Ambassador Pifer, what you want is America to start actually arming Kiev troops, effectively.
The report calls for provision of serious money, $1 billion in this fiscal year. Although most of those funds would go to non-lethal assistance, the one thing that the Ukrainians really need are counter-battery radars that would allow them to detect the origin of incoming rocket and artillery strikes, which caused probably about 70% of the Ukrainian casualties. But we also argue that the U.S. government should change its position and allow provision of lethal defensive weapons, in particular light anti-armor weapons, because both NATO and Ukraine told us when we were there in mid-January that they've seen a huge influx of Russian armor coming across the border from Russia into eastern Ukraine.
Okay, what reception have you had from the White House to this proposal? Because so far the White House has been resistant to provide lethal assistance.
Well, we did brief this report to senior government officials late last week. I guess I came with a couple of impressions. One is they listened they listened with interest. They said the report was very timely. And the impression that I think I came with and my co-authors is that this right now is a very live issue within the U.S. government, much more so than, say, a couple of months ago.
When you were there, you mentioned the fact that there's been this influx of troops coming across the border from Russia. Would you classify this as an invasion?
Well, there are Russian military forces on Ukrainian territory without the permission of the Ukrainian government. I think most countries would consider that an invasion. Now, we did hear a little bit of a difference. What NATO said they saw were Russian officers who were doing advising and training of separatists. What the Ukraine said was, no, there actually are Russian units organized in eastern Ukraine.
You've called on the United States and NATO to step up,
Correct.
as you just said. If they don't, what do you think happens in East Ukraine?
Well, the concern right now is that the Russians have military options, and we're not trying to win this war militarily. The idea here is to give the Ukrainians the military capability to raise the cost to Russia of escalation or aggression, and hopefully take that option off the table for Moscow, and then steer them towards where this should be, which is a negotiated solution, a real ceasefire, which is not holding now, but then moving on to a real negotiation on a political settlement.
Some of the resistance in the White House up until now has been, let's do the sanctions route because we don't want to aggravate the situation. We don't want to provoke Putin too much. Are you concerned at all about that, or you think we've gone too far?
Well, I think we've heard also, I think one of the reasons why the U.S. government has not gone is there is a concern that would the Russians escalate. But I think the view of our group is, if you look over the last 10 months, the Russians have escalated. And so now really the rationale for helping the Ukrainians build up their defense capabilities is so that they can discourage the Russians from further escalation. And the kind of things that we just saw in your report that's taking place around Donetsk and Debaltseve, and even some concerns that there might be a Russian and separatist push to even go further.
Okay. Ambassador Pifer, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.